Welcome to Season 2, Ventures and Visionaries, Episode 10, Humans, Hype, and Headcount, Building Careers in the New Sales Era. This podcast is about vision, entrepreneurship, and innovation. We discuss the lessons and challenges we continue to face so that we can uncover opportunities today and tomorrow. I'm your host, Mordy Hackle. Welcome to the show. Our guest today is Matthew Wyatt, expert in strategy, sales, marketing, and a host of the CEO and the Salesman podcast. Matthew, how are you doing today?
Very well, thank you, Mordy. How are you?
I am great. I'm so excited that you're here today for a couple of reasons, but most specifically because I love talking about sales. It's a topic that's near and dear to my heart, and I also love technology, and technology seems to be impacting sales, and that's why you're here to tell us a little bit about that. So I think
absolutely, it's my first love is sales, and technology was a very, very close second. I got my first computer in, I'm going to date myself now, 1990. So
Okay. And may I ask how much RAM was in said computer, or?
I think we. I remember using a product that could double space my hard drive, and I was able to expand the hard drive. You remember? You're old enough to remember that, right? And I remember expanding it out to something crazy like 30.
I know it was insane.
40 megabytes. The whole hard drive. So
it was insane.
It was a 286.
There you go. I don't remember. I think my first one was in the 3s. I don't remember if I hit the 2s, but more like a work thing. But I hear you. Those were the days, my friend. Those were the days.
Good old X-Tree Gold as the operating system rather than DOS, because DOS was too hard for idiots like me.
Do you know that when I was doing work still back, when I was still doing consulting, I was at one of the large entertainment companies. If I mentioned the name, everybody would know what it is. And they had somebody who came in who used to work doing maintenance on old IBM hard drives. And he said that IBM, I think it was IBM. It was either IBM or Xerox, but IBM had outlawed the wearing of neckties around that time because the hard drives were these ginormous things and they were open. And one person got his necktie caught in the spin and nearly strangled himself to death. So and we think about, hard drives, I think like a little chip, it's this tiny little thing. But
that's it. I put a 128 gig micro SD into a camera yesterday, and it's literally the size of your fingernail. So anyway, a couple of old guys talking about technology.
That's it. So let's make the pivot from talking about yesterday's technology to tomorrow's technology, and a little bit about sales. Maybe we start with sales. I think, Matthew, that's probably the better way to go.
Absolutely.
I think, in our pre-conversation, you talked a little bit about sales being the lifeblood of any organization. And I'd like for you to just, frame that perspective and talk a little bit about founders that still get it wrong in sales. And how would you think that founders should approach sales in today's day and age? People think you just kind of throw stuff on the internet and the leads will just magically materialize.
Look, the saying, I don't know who said it, but nothing happens until a sale is made. Everything you look around, touch, everything you can see around you, the way that you got to work this morning, that was sold by somebody. And so, I hold technology people near and dear to my heart. I've employed many of them over the years. I've run businesses in the technology space since I was 22. I started my first tech business at 22. So I never disparage the value the technology people or technicians have. It's just that the mindset change between I'm really good technically to now I need to go talk about it passionately are often two different skill sets. And often people who are in the technical space have had and most people have had probably a less than favorable engagement or exchange with a salesperson who's been a bit of a high pressure or who's tried to manipulate them in some way. And so they've made some sort of deep down decision, I'm not in sales, so therefore everything related to sales is a bit icky and a bit hard, and I'm not that guy. I'm just going to build the greatest mousetrap the world has ever seen, and the world will beat a path to my door. Kevin Costner, when talking about ghosts, talked about how if you build it, they will come. Unfortunately, it doesn't work anymore in 2020. Well, it hasn't worked for 20 years, but let's say in 2026 and beyond, it's not going to continue to work because there's so much noise out there.
So how do you think that technology has a place to leverage marketing and sales to drive said sales still, or really like it's more about the human beings and how that would work itself out?
It's a hybrid approach. If we just go complete one-to-one, knocking on doors, getting your foot in the door, being the old vacuum salesman from the 50s, it's not going to work because you're not going to be able to get the reach. And certainly, when I first started my business, I'll tell you a quick story. First started my business, the advertising we did was a 1 inch wide by 2 inch in the newspaper, and people would call the 1-800 number, and then the salesperson would pick up the call and take them through providing brochures and demonstrations and references and all of this documents and paperwork and all that sort of stuff, and credibility and trust. Well, that's so sales started at the beginning of the selling, but in 2025, 2026 and beyond, marketing is doing all the work up until the point where the person almost has to, by almost begrudgingly, have to talk to a salesperson. And so marketing and technology are interlinked in such an incredible way. Facebook is a multi-billion-dollar business, and so is Google, because of marketing and because its ability to find your customer who's looking now, who's able to generate leads. So technology is so woven into marketing, they're almost inseparable today. Where the salesperson comes in is towards the end of the sale. And that salesperson needs to be even better than they ever have before, able to build better relationships, understand and continue the conversation that's already existing in the client's mind at that point in time. So if they're going to engage with the client, they need to have a conversation, they need to understand exactly where the client is, and then take it from there, not rehash old stuff the client's already seen online through whatever social platform that they've been able to observe.
So how do you recommend young people think about going into this area as a career if they really need to be super polished, and they obviously cannot be rehashing, regurgitating? They need to understand the problems that the client is already looking for, it sounds like. And it sounds like you need to come in ready with the pitch, but without sounding salesy. So now you're standing at a very, very interesting place.
Absolutely. So what would I recommend for a young person coming into sales today? So what I would do is I would find an organization that has a very strong sales culture and learn everything I can from there. The absolute worst thing you can do is is bring on board a young salesperson, and I've seen this many times in really capable technology businesses, is they go, right, we're going to make our first hire, we don't want to spend too much, so we're going to get a lower level, maybe 80 to 100 grand a year worth of salesperson. And that person is then given the little tin badge of you're a salesperson, go make sales. And there's no sales culture, there's no sales assets, there's no backup and support or training. And that person then flounders and fails. And I've seen it over and over again and over and over again. So if a young person's coming into selling, they need to go to a business with a very strong sales culture and a very strong framework and structure on how to actually do a sale. And within that industry that you're going into, if you're going into technology sales, you need to really understand that and be able to build a great network and build a great conversation around that stuff. So the worst thing a young salesperson can do, not the worst thing obviously, but being dramatic for the podcast, but I think it would be very, very important if my sons came to me and says, Dad, I don't want to be doing what I'm going to college for, I want to be in selling. I would say, right, let's go find a larger organization with a very strong sales culture, and you learn from people already doing it, because social proof and seeing it happening in real time is the best training ground for selling.
And I want to drive into a couple of side points that you may not have intended to mention. It doesn't sound like you're saying that somebody who knows that they want to be in sales is necessarily going to invest heavily in their formal education. And it's better to go and but from the right kind of place, get the right kind of training. Am I understanding you correctly or not exactly?
Sales is a combination of art and science. And so you don't want to have so art and science are trades as well. And so if you don't want to have somebody to come and redo your electricity or HVAC who've never actually been out there in the real world. You want to have them if you can be partnered with somebody who's been doing it for 20 years and watch them and caddy them, carry their bag and see them, but not only them, but also multiple people across the spectrum, because some salespeople are are high detail. Some people are high relationship. And so you want to get a taste of both types of people. That's why I talk about going to a larger organization to have a taste of each one of person's and each their styles, find the one that works for you, and then follow that process. And Anthony Robbins says it so many times is model and mold yourself into how the successful people are doing it. Then you have got the authority to find your own way. Anybody coming in and saying, "Oh, well, I'm just give to the gab. I can talk to anybody," then the problem is selling. That's probably the biggest misnomer or the biggest mistake people make is they just talk crap. And so you need to listen. So sales is the art of diagnosis and then prescription. Imagine if you walked into your doctor's surgery and they looked at me and went, "Oh, you're late 40s, early 50s, slightly overweight. Well, I've got a great heart medication for you, Matthew, because many of my clients have had really great success with this heart medication." And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, I came here for my tennis elbow. What do you mean? But so it's ridiculous to say, from that example I just gave you, is ridiculous. Nobody would even think that. But thousands and thousands of salespeople are out there every day going, "My AI-powered widget is the greatest you've ever seen, and Mordy, you need it today, or your life's going to be over." Well, they've spent no time understanding your needs, wants, or desires in any way, shape, or form.
Let's talk about needs, wants, and desires. I think that's an important area to drill into, particularly if we're dealing with, say, a company that has never had a sales force before, and it's owner-led sales, and it's making a transition today from somebody who naturally was the operator, became the mouthpiece or the megaphone for the company, can do it intuitively, understands every single widget the company does, how they do it, why they do it. They know the history, they know the background, they know everything. Now you're trying to get in people and create a system where the people can flourish. Is it smarter to bring in the experienced people and then build the system? Is it smarter to build the system first? How would you go about that if you're kind of sitting at the precipice of making a new, building your organization anew, if you will?
I've done this a dozen times, so I know this specifically exactly. So my customers are the ones who are trying to leverage and go from founder-led to team-led. And there's a few things that the founder has to let go emotionally of being correct all the time or have it done their way, because the founder can always speak with the greatest level of authority. They can speak CEO to CEO, and they can sit down and go, "Look, Mr. Jones, your IT infrastructure or your cloud services or your software stack or whatever the problem is this. And in my 25, 30 years of experience, this is the way you should go. It's got to be an AWS infrastructure. It's got to be this. You've got to use Docker, or containerized application execution or whatever it might be, whatever the technical thing might be." You get some 22-year-old coming in to say that. And this CEO's, seen it and been there and done that, and they don't have the authority or they don't have the structure. They're not going to be able to carry that type of water. They're not going to carry that type of weight into the conversation. So this is how you are able to slowly transition from founder to team. And it's a real challenge. So go through all the tasks that the founder does on a daily basis, the sales tasks, not the managing a team or talking, whatever else. It's just the sales structure, the sales format. And then you find the lowest skilled activity and find somebody to do that job. And do that job until they're about 70 to 80% as effective as the owner. Then they can qualify to do the next bit, which is also a great transitional period and a way to actually provide little mini updates and bonuses and new titles for the new person coming in. So if you are going to hire somebody and if you don't have a strong sales culture, you're going to recruit somebody at a lower level and they just do SDR work. Maybe they just make the phone calls, or maybe whatever the job is, they enter data into the CRM. They carry the bag for the CEO in the meetings, and they see how that person's doing the job. They do the lowest, least skilled piece of work first. They get good at that, then they can graduate to the next lowest skilled piece of work, which of course, once again, the founder is not going to be, on day one, pull the ripcord, eject themselves out of there and they're no longer in selling mode. That's the dream. It doesn't happen. And if they do that, it's going to fail. I've seen that fail many times. So what they need to do is they make the long list, 20 or 30 tasks that happens in a sales process, and then they start looking at the sales process from unqualified lead to closed deal, and you start chipping away from these bits here. So qualification, all they do is qualification. So that young person gets on the phone. Hi, Mordy. My name's Matthew. I've been working with the business for about 6 weeks now. And what I'd like to do is just ask you 3 or 4 questions to make sure you're able to speak with my CEO. Would that be okay today? Like literally just do those little bits. And then you qualify that and you get good at it. And then you base the metrics on activity and outcome. The activity is number of calls, number of meetings, all that sort of stuff. And then you move them to the next piece. And then you move them to the next piece. And all the way along until they're able to close a deal for themselves. And this might be a 6-month, 12-month process.
And that sounds like if you skip the steps, that's one of the major reasons why people fail. You're setting up.
It'll fail. You're setting this poor person up to fail. You're not providing them with any structure. Like you're going to give them scripts. I mean, the thing is, the founder's just operating because they're just able to, download it out of the universe. They're 20-something years worth of experience and talking about this sort of stuff. They just had to vibe it, right? They just had to get out there and just talk stuff. And that's great. The thing is, this person who's come from a completely different background, completely different frame that they're coming from, they're bussing it into work or training it into work. They're getting there. They're like, okay, I'm keen. I'm excited. What do I do? And if he goes, here's I'm about to say yellow pages because I'm very old. But here's the internet. Here's Zoom info. Here's the veritable telephone book. Just start calling businesses. They need IT support. They have got 500 seats or more, and they're in the manufacturing space. This is our target customers. Go call them. All they're going to do is call up and go, yes, hello, we help. Do you want some IT? Like that's
yes, I want.
So, thank goodness you called me. My 500 seat business has got no IT. And the thing is that in that type of business, any business over 20 people is in the IT business. Really, even if you're building widgets, there's some version of technology that runs the organization. There's an accounting function, there's a manufacturing function, there's all these functions all underpinned by technology. Yep. There's got to be an IT guy or girl in there. Yeah,
no, there's no question. A 500-person company today is running design, they're running manufacturing, they may have compliance, they may have all kinds of different things that, most people don't even think of. Oh, of course, I, went to the store, I bought product XYZ. But, how it actually got to be here, I forget who is it. Maybe it was Napoleon Hill who spoke about what pieces go into a pencil. And you think it's a very interesting video. I mean, like obviously, I buy the pencil and it's, whatever, $1.99 for, a package of 20, but no one thinks about, the wood and the paint and the embossing and the eraser and the rubber, and they had to grow the rubber and they had to get the lead inside the pencil, which isn't really lead. I forget what material that is, but like, who thought, this is hundreds of thousands of people who've developed a pencil.
Yeah, exactly. So it's always more complex. And, and obviously, you've heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect, where the less you know about a topic, the simpler it looks until you get closer and closer to it. So the Dunning-Kruger effect is the less you know about a topic, the simpler it looks. Oh, you just want to have these database and pull data from this information over to here? Well, why don't you just sort of connect an API and just pull the data? Well, of course, until you go, well, there's 1,000 steps in between. And so what happens is people who don't have sales training or don't have marketing training or haven't spent their lives doing that sort of stuff, they go, oh, well, all they got to do is make a few phone calls and qualify a lead, and then they get a sale.
Of course. The Mordy Hackle effect, by the way, just to point out that there's a corollary to this one, is the you can just phrase of life. You can just, can't you just? Yeah, you can just. And the third part of that story, by the way, is I can grill a burger in my backyard and it tastes damn good. I must say so. Like, it's a pretty damn good burger. I can't run a burger joint, and I certainly can't run a burger franchise. It's not the same thing.
It's not the same thing. Exactly.
I love that. What do you call it? The Dunning-Kruger effect?
The Dunning-Kruger effect. It was a study by one of the Ivy Leagues, I think, or somewhere out of the UK. But essentially just saying that the less somebody knows about a topic, the simpler it looks from the outside.
So maybe we just drill into that for a sec. How would we coach the people we're selling to help them understand that things are not nearly as simple as they seem? However, they're not as complicated as one or an engineer would tend to make them because then they would never buy it. It's way too complicated. Where do you find that the golden path, if you will, yellow brick road? I don't know, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, that's right. We'll name it. So the way that we look at this is we need to have, first of all, we need to have the customer understand they don't know what we need to have them understand that we need the customer to be consciously incompetent.
Okay.
Because if they were consciously competent, if they knew what they needed, then they wouldn't need us, right? And so the way to do that is through diagnosis. Where does it hurt? How often does it hurt? What are the situations that it does hurt? And so over the course of the last 12 months, how have you tried to solve it? And why didn't that work? And that last question, and why didn't it work, is an incredibly powerful question, because the customer reveals what they've tried to do, but also reveals why it failed. Oh, well, Mike in manufacturing in the warehouse, we gave him a new shiny iPad with the new software on it. And we went in 2 months later wondering why the reporting's not coming through, and he's using his clipboard again. That's why this $1 million IT infrastructure update didn't work, because good old Mike's using his freaking his clipboard. And I've seen that. In mining companies, in $1 billion a year mining companies, and whatever her name was in administration, didn't want to run the people management software. She had a Excel spreadsheet
because it works better. It's simpler to use. It's simpler to use. It's much simpler to use.
So, I've just lost a train of thought on the question.
We were talking a little bit about the simple reasons why the technology doesn't work, but really more importantly, you asked the question, why doesn't it work?
Yeah, so that's the process we need to go through. We need to make sure that the customer fully understands their own problem first, and the indelicate way of putting that is have the customer kick their own bruise. They need to fully embrace why they're speaking to Mordy or Matthew. They need to fully understand that there are people out here with more expertise in certain domains, with greater access to information than they are, and then have the person understand that deeply. I'm not going to talk about manufacturing. I'm not going to talk about these things, but I will talk about how we're going to do this, this, and this, and make sure your manufacturing process works better through implementation of a ERP or better connection, whatever it might be. And so the person needs to be fully aware of their own shortcomings first. Then, and only then, once you've diagnosed the problem, can you provide a prescription. And only then. And because going back to my doctor before, what we talked about before, if we're not fully understanding the customer, then they're going to feel like they're being sold to. If we fully understand the customer, if we take the time to fully engage and honestly engage, then we're going to be able to make a recommendation. And the recommendation, well, from my perspective, how it occurs to me is you would be looking at this, this, and this. How do you feel about that? Does that make sense? And you need to make sure you get sign-off and checks points at all stages along the conversation, continually summarize, because the thing is, to anybody out there selling technical products, it's probably the 50th time you've sold this. And so it's easy for you. And I'll talk about easy, and just want to put a word in, put a pin in easy for a moment there. But it's easy for you to sell this because you've seen it all before. But for the customer, they've probably never bought it, or they bought it once before. So they don't know how to buy it.
Right.
They know how to do their manufacturing thing, but they have no clue on how to buy your technical thing. So it's ridiculous to even say to them, well, all you got to do is this, or it's easy, we can do that. Now, and so you need to respect the sales process, but also you've got to map that onto the buying process. And if you don't map your sales process and the customer's buying process together, there'll be a mismatch and it won't work. And you'll get things like, oh, I've got to talk to the board, or maybe next quarter, or we just don't have the budget for that right now. And whenever I hear don't have the budget right now, that means I've done a poor job of demonstrating value, or the customer doesn't really need it. Because if I came along to you and said, hey, I've got a Ferrari out the front, brand new, 2026 Ferrari, it's 10 grand. I reckon you could find a homeless person on the street and they could generate 10 grand from somewhere. They would hustle enough to get 10 grand. So it's not a question of money, it's a question or budget, it's a question of value. So people will find money if you've built enough value in it.
Really?
And the only way so if I just finish this thought, the thing is, the value is based on not what I think as a seller is valuable, it's what the customer thinks is valuable. And if the customer doesn't think it's valuable, doesn't matter if it's $5 or $5 million, they won't spend it.
It really sounds like you're talking about a couple of things that I think are very, very valuable. The first one is not just mapping your sales process, but mapping the buyer's process, understanding that you want to help them get to conscious incompetence and kick their own bruise, as you said. You want to, on top of that, understand that that they need to feel viscerally, probably, that they're getting so much value that they would be silly to not purchase this thing. And I think
it's got to be a no-brainer. Yeah. Absolutely, it's got to be a no-brainer. And also, they need to recognize the consequences of not doing it. I was actually coaching a client who's calling me, who's got a huge customer on the line. It was a real challenge. They were a cybersecurity business, and they were talking to a bank and in Australia. And even though I now live here in the US,
we'll get to that in a minute.
I still have clients.
We'll get to that in a minute. The smart people in Princeton. We'll get there in a minute.
So, and he called me and said, I can't close this guy. It's been going on for 6 months. I said, okay, cool. Let's have this conversation. And I got them to reset. Call them up. This is a bit of coaching for you, for people listening. So I said, call them up and say, look, it's been quite a while since we've been speaking. I know you're genuinely considering our product. I just want to understand, if you think back right to the beginning of our started conversations in June 2024, we started our conversation, and you originally was talking about this, and this. Can you just take me through what were the 2 or 3 main drivers for you to have that conversation with me at that time? Because what happened is the person got to a point where it was, I'm going to spend $500,000 on cybersecurity things, and they sort of lost sight of the consequences of getting it wrong. And so they had the conversation and said, oh, okay, it sounds pretty serious. And you hold credit card details of clients, and you hold this information, you hold that information. And so what would happen to the business if cybersecurity failed for you? Oh, this, and this. Okay. What would happen to, for your role, just so I can understand, what would happen in your role if that occurred? Person went real quiet. They went, oh, this is reporting back after I coached him to do this. They went, oh, well, I'd probably, have a review with the board and probably lose my job. I said, okay, well, then he said, okay, well, it sounds like it's pretty important. It occurs to me that we're a good fit. What do you think? They went, yeah, we should do this. Close the deal. So there's nothing about price, nothing about budget, nothing about timing or board approval. It's you made it real, you made it painful, and you made it immediate.
And it wasn't like you actually made it. You just helped the person understand the situation that they were really in anyway and just didn't recognize that.
Well, this is the thing. This is the thing with selling, is it's actually, if you genuinely believe in what you're selling, and he did, and the company did a great job, if you're genuinely providing value in the marketplace, it is your obligation to be the best version of yourself in the best selling way. Because if they don't buy from you, they either don't buy, which is a problem, or they buy from somebody other than you, which if you believe you've got the best product out there, it's your obligation to actually make sure they buy from you. Because it would be like, I use doctors a lot as a reference point. But if your doctor went, oh, Mordy, you can take these pills or not, whatever, it's up to you, mate. You'd be like, oh, well, maybe I don't need them. He's not really that sure. But if he goes, your life depends on you taking these at exactly 6:33 a.m. every single day for the rest of your life, or you'll drop dead. You're taking those pills, and you're spending the money on the prescription.
Yeah, and you're going to thank the doctor.
That's right.
It's very interesting. Let's maybe pivot away from the relationship building and the pain and all that stuff. Let's go back a little bit to the technology, and then we'll talk a little bit about your journey from Australia to the United States, because I think that's also fascinating. Maybe get a couple minutes in on that. there are a lot of tools now that help salespeople. As you noted before, the buyer's journey, on the other hand, also is way more educated. When we both started in our business, the salesperson's job was to educate the customer, and the customer didn't know anything about it. And the way they would get their information was, bringing in a salesperson or multiple salespeople to teach them about what it was and learn about the buyer's process. But now, between Google and ChatGPT and all of our cousins, the there's got to be a way that most people, I don't know, got to be. I would say that most buyers probably are very well educated before they bring anybody in. And if so, what does that mean to the role of the salesperson?
So I want to sort of, let's go up the tree a little bit, because it all starts with marketing, and everything is downstream from lead generation and marketing. And so the role of the marketer, the role of the business, is to promote themselves and make sure they get part of that conversation straight away. They need to be, so if somebody's out there, this has actually happened a couple of weeks ago. I got contacted by somebody in New York saying, "Hey, Matthew, I do financial services for business owners and high net worth individuals. Let me know if that's interesting to you." The person has spent no time or energy or effort in figuring out whether or not I'm either of those things. Well, I know I'm a business owner. They've spent no time building any type of relationship. They've spent no time, any at all. They're just gone, "Hey, here's what I do. You do some work and tell me if you want to buy from me." So I went, "Actually, I do need some advice in America, because I come from overseas. But I didn't buy from that person. But I went and Googled it. And guess what? I found the person with the person out there who's publishing articles. I found a person who's talking to people exactly like me. Find a person who is out there communicating, is on stages, is on podcasts, is on and other things." And they go, "Well, this person's clearly an expert. The industry's decided they're an expert. They've got clear understanding, and they break down ideas very simply for me. I'm going to go talk to them." So what this person did with their crappy sales pitch is they actually encouraged me to go Google that solution and find somebody else to buy from. So really, so what they've done is they've just helped their weak effort, their non-effort has created a sale for somebody else. And so really, when it comes to messaging and marketing and selling, you need to be out there producing and building a personal brand like what you're doing on the podcast. You need to be out there and the one having conversations with industries. You need to be out there putting out thought leadership. Thought leadership feels a bit tired and hacky, but it really is. You still need to be going out there saying things in the marketplace that resonate with your perfect target customer. And the first thing there is getting really, really clear on your perfect target customer, not just demographics. We work with Midwestern manufacturing businesses of $50 million. It is not only that, but also the psychographics. How do they act? What are their values? The market is massive. There's unlimited customers out there in the world. And if you become very, very good at a very narrow piece of the market, you'll get paid exponentially more than somebody who does everything for everybody. So I know I sort of went off on a bit of a tangent there, Mordy, but what I'm trying to say here is it's absolutely imperative that the business owner and the salesperson and whoever is going to go out there and communicate with customers, they need a profile online, because Google's now calling it the messy middle. You become brand aware, and then you do work. Then they'll find you on socials. They'll join your email list and see what you've got to say there. They'll do all of these things before buying from you. That messy middle could take months, years even.
Right.
And so it's super important to build a profile. For everybody in the organization.
So let's just go back to young people entering the workforce. How would you recommend the best way for them to start creating their messy middle profile?
By tracking their journey, by reporting on what they're coming back and reporting on what they're finding. So if a young person is going to start selling to an older demographic, they need to start talking about what's happening right now. They can't go, well, this happened 20 years ago, and they can't talk about their 286 computer because they wasn't even born then. But what they can do is they can say, what I'm seeing today in 2026 is. This is how, and you can start commentating on. If you don't have any hard, strong opinions of your own, look at the news, see what's going on out there in that specific, the Midwestern manufacturing organizations. Midwestern manufacturing organization 2026 are doing this, and you start writing that. You start putting it out there, and you connect with people on LinkedIn and say, "Hey, I just wrote an ebook," and it doesn't take very much effort to write an ebook. If you want to write a good one, it does take a bit of extra time, money, and energy, but a reasonable one. Little bit of ChatGPT or Claude, little bit of work there, and you can drive a reasonable lead magnet and say, "Hey, Mordy, we just wrote this, and this. Would you like to have a check? Would you like to check it out?"
I think that's an amazing hook for people to be able to, just get a little bit of a flavor of what you're doing, and without, alienating them or giving the competitor the sale.
Add the value. Hey, financial services in New York City in 2026 are doing this, and this. We write a short report. And even if the person's super junior and they've got somebody senior, like you or me in the business, maybe they go, "Hey, our director, Mordy, wrote this article on this, and this. Would you like me to send it over to you?"
I think most people would say yes, or many people if you're in the right market.
Because it's got to be hyper real. So the thing with technology, circling back to a question you had earlier about technology, the data is out there, the data is available, and it doesn't cost very much. Products like Apollo and ZoomInfo and these sort of things are ubiquitous and reasonably cheap for organizations. You can find people with you can sniper these people, because really in large organizations you don't need 1,000 sales, you might need 10 sales in a year, and that changes the complexion of the organization depending on your customers, of course. Most of my customers are selling, they're a smaller business selling to larger corporates, so they hunt whales and they do it targeted. And so you just provide value, and as long as it's got to be hyper personalized. We help middle managers in finance organizations in New York City with the name Jeff, who wear a puffer vest, who are left-handed, do this.
I think you just named everybody, but it's that's just a joke. But since I love your accent, maybe we'll spend a couple of minutes. Like, what brought you to the States? Australia is great, and certainly I have not been there in a long time. But when I was there, it was amazing place. We had such a great time, and it's an absolutely magnificent country. So what drew you here?
The reality is that I wanted to, so we were walking through New York a couple of years ago, and I said to the family, "Geez, I'd like to live here one day." And both my boys were still in school, and we sort of toyed with the idea, and then I went, "You know what, let's just do it. Let's just figure it out." And so we obviously went through all the appropriate legal channels and employed solicitors and lawyers over here, and attorneys. I mean, you guys call them attorneys.
Lawyers too. Solicitors is somebody else, I think. But you got
soliciting is a whole different thing. We found the appropriate people, and just an adventure. My boys have very specific goals, and one of them wants to put rockets into space, and the other one wants to be. I mean, talk about a specific goal. He wants to be the doctor for the Chicago Bulls.
Hey,
I said, "Look, mate, that's one job in the world. You want that one job?" He said, "Yeah, I want that one job." I said, "Okay, cool, right out. Well, if you want to play that game, you got to enter the arena, and the arena is the US." And so we made the decision. We toyed with the idea. Made the decision about February last year. Took us a couple of months to do the paperwork and all that type of stuff. We sold the house and did it. We were here for the beginning of the school year in September.
It really sounds like the key is plugging into what your kids thought was important and their sense of adventure.
Yep. I've lived in a few different countries. My oldest has now lived in New Zealand, Australia, Bali. I took a year off after I sold one of my tech business. I lived in Bali in Indonesia for a year, and now the US, and of course, so. I like traveling. I like, being a tourist in America is a very different experience than being a resident. And being part of that whole
What's
machine.
The coolest thing you've noticed about your U.S. experience so far?
Two things. It's meritocracy. If you're good and you're willing to put the effort in, the sky is absolutely the limit. The market is unlimited in size, and there's always an opportunity to do more. And what I guess is, nobody really understands, outside of America, I don't think people really understand the level of work that Americans put in, the hustle. Like we all sort of, overseas, we mock the American hustle culture. We go, well, we knock off at 5, and Australia and Europe bring in laws like you can't be contacted after 5. Literally,
Yeah.
if you're my boss, Mordy, you can't email me after 5 and expect any type of response. And I guess that's okay for people who want a lifestyle, but people who want to, chop it up, who actually want to get out there and really make a difference in the world, who want to impact the world, well then, you're going to respond to that email. You're going to do the work. And I've always owned my own business since I was 22, so there's never been a time when I have clocked off. I don't understand. That's not for me, and that's fine. Other people have different goals in life, and also sport. For example, my youngest is into rowing. We went to a school on the Gold Coast in Australia, which rowing was a part of the school curriculum, or part of the elective sports they could do, and so it was 2 days a week and a regatta on the weekend, and that's as much as you could do. Here, he's joined a club, and it's 6 days a week, 3 hours a day, and there's 4 seasons a year, whereas in Australia there was 1 season a year.
That's unbelievable.
Same with basketball. Basketball, just the local high school. The basketball is 6 days a week.
Wow.
Even through the holidays, we were going to go skiing this holiday, and then we got the basketball schedule, and there was a game on the 30th, and a game on the 3rd, and a game.
And no skiing for the family.
And no skiing for this guy. But that's okay. Look, I am very comfortable, and I have ownership and accountability and responsibility for those decisions, because I want to give my kids the greatest opportunity to pursue whatever they want to do. And so that is a choice that I've made, and I have to live with those choices and embrace those choices.
I love that perspective. It really, really speaks to me. And I have to say that there's so much wisdom in being able to be cognizant of the choices that you make, both explicitly and implicitly, for yourself, for your family, especially the kids who are making decisions without really having the benefit of any kind of life experience or wisdom. And I really love that. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Good.
Yeah. So look, so what else? That's what I love about America so far, is there's always there's unlimited opportunity to be better. And my youngest is in engineering, and there's he can go to there's a summer camp for like 3 or 4 weeks at Rutgers to go build robotics and talk with people in industry and live on site for a month.
Wow.
And that type of network that you build, that type of exposure to real life, that is so valuable. I'm sure that exists in Australia somewhere, but there's more. In Jersey, which is where I live, there's 9 million people in Jersey. And it's concentrated, right? Very, very concentrated state. I think it's the most populous state, and the opportunity there is just so great compared with the 27 million people across all of Australia. Australia is the same size geographically as the North America, or the North America, US. The number of people is just vastly different.
Yeah, that was one of the things that back in the day when we had traveled from Sydney and Melbourne to Perth. And it's literally like flying from, New York to California. And no one thinks about that in those terms. At least I didn't at the time. I was 23 years old. So, it was a long time ago.
Yeah, it's a 5.5 hour flight. It's just a 5.5 hour flight. And the thing is, Australians are all pressed up against the edge because there's water there and there's no water in the middle. There's no mountains, no water. And so it's all
But it is pretty. It is pretty. Matthew, thank you so much for educating and spending some time today with us to teach us a little bit about sales and to remind us that the United States offers so much bounty today. It's so easy to get swept up with the noise and the bad and the negativity And remaining positive and remaining grounded is, I think, an absolutely paramount value, at least to me, and I appreciate you very much for sharing that. Thank you. And I would just like to thank I'd like to thank Matthew for joining us. And as a final word to our listeners, if people are looking to connect with you, how should they best reach out to you?
They can find me on LinkedIn, Matthew Wyatt on LinkedIn. If they are interested in understanding how they can actually expand their selling, and I have an online test that you can go through, and we have four key pillars that help people understand exactly where they are in their sales and marketing journey. They can go to scorecard.techtalk.co. I can give you the link later in the conversation. But it is, so what I try to do is I try to understand exactly where people are now, and then provide them exactly what they need at this point in time. So much point talking about grandiose ideas. If they're at a white belt, I give them white belt stuff. If they're at a green belt, I give them green belt stuff.
I love that. And I appreciate the martial arts reference as well. I did not progress past orange, but I do appreciate it very much. There you go. I would like to also thank our sponsor. Season 2 of Ventures and Visionaries is sponsored by KJ Technology. KJ Technology provides business and technology advisory services. They help leadership teams align business goals with technology initiatives, so the plans, the people, and the tech team are all pulling in the same direction. KJ's team of experts help with proactive IT management that solve real-world business challenges. For a complimentary consultation, please email info@kjtechnology.com or call 646-556-6500 and select the sales option. Thank you, everybody, and have an absolutely wonderful day.